Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of TalkCivils with me, Nick Lake. My guest today is a real powerhouse of inspiration and enthusiasm for civil engineering. He absolutely loves his career and the opportunities that it brings for him and all his colleagues around him. I'm going to split this conversation into two parts again. The first one is going to be all about Malcolm's career journey from leaving school right the way through to his role with the ICE and now back as a professional development manager with Tony G and Partners. And then the second part is going to be all about the work he's been doing looking at the apprentice and technician route into professional accreditation. This does join quite nicely with the work that Liam's been doing that we've just talked about in previous episodes, and we do touch a little bit on that as well. So I hope you enjoy this first episode. Well, hi Malcolm, thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to me today. I think this is, I've been saying it to all the guests so far, but it's a privilege to get an opportunity to grab someone with this much experience for half an hour or so and just really dig into their wisdom and knowledge and everything else. So yes, thank you very much. We've got a lot of topics here we could cover, so I'm going to try and get through as much as I possibly can. But why don't we cast your mind back to the Malcolm Peake that just left school. You embarked on a civil engineering career. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened and what that looked like?
I always knew from an early age I wanted to be a civil engineer, Nick. Always knew. At the age of 12, when I was at school, you got to write your own school reports. So there's a new idea that students wrote their reports and then the teachers would check that report, see if they agreed with the student. And if they did, that would then be sent to your parents. What a wonderful idea. So everybody wrote good reports about themselves, didn't they? And in my report, I'd written, when I grew up, I want to be a structural or a civil engineer at the age of 12. I'd gone in there. And that set the die for the decisions that followed on. So the GCSEs, I chose the DT, I chose maths and physics. I went on to do A-levels and did the classics, math, physics and chemistry when I went to there. 3 or 4 of my closest friends doing A-levels all went off to do engineering as well. They did aeronautical engineering, chemical engineering, and I was a part of that. And electrical engineering in one case. And then off I went to university making choices, thinking, right, I'm going to choose to do civil engineering because that's what I've always wanted to do. And I had to tick the box at uni. And at that point, it dawned on me, I didn't really know what a civil engineer was.
You were clearly very keen on it, but you're not quite sure why you wanted that one.
I didn't know any civil engineers. I'd never met any civil engineers. I'd never seen any civil engineering at that point, even though it's everywhere, isn't it? So I second checked. I went, wait a minute. So when I applied for university courses, I applied for general engineering courses at that point. And the 2 at that time that I was looking for was one at Durham, one at Warwick, where they did 2 years general engineering. So you did electrical, mechanical and civil for a couple of years. And then you chose what to do for your 3rd and 4th year. And at that point you could specialize in what you wanted to do. So that was the beginning of the journey for me, with a quick pause at the age of 18 to think, wait a minute, what is civil engineering? Yeah. And that's a fascinating question that the Institution of Civil Engineers and society itself hasn't quite yet got an answer to after about 200 years, plus 1,000 years of doing it in the real world, isn't it? What is civil engineering? What a fantastic question to ask people, because the answers you get back are marvellous.
So so you did 2 years of a general engineering course and then you did decide to specialise in civils?
I did. It was a fascinating moment that for me, looking back, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it reveals a lot about me. So at the end of the second year, you had to go and you had a series of 7 or 8 exams. And at the end of that, you would have an interview with the head of year at the university, and he would sit down and you would choose your discipline, electrical, mechanical, or civil. And I remember going into my interview, and the head of engineering had sat down with me and said, "So, Mr. Peake, it won't take long to decide what you're going to choose." And what he meant by that is, in the electrical exams, I'd got well over 80%, got a very good first qualification for the groundings of a future career. In the mechanical exams, I got a very good 2-1 in there, and in the civils had barely scraped a third. So he sat down there with his pen poised. On which options should you be choosing, Mr. Peake? He said, I have to ask. And I said, civil. And he paused, looked at me as, are you sure you've seen your results? And yeah, I'd worked really hard at electrical. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I knew I had to do well at it. I revised twice as hard for that subject to deliver the answers. So I knew I could answer questions in an exam and do what they needed me to do. Mechanical was okay, but it moved a lot. I didn't really like that so much. And civils was pure joy, and probably didn't revise as hard as I should have done. And I sat in there, and it took good half an hour, 45 minutes to convince the head of engineering I wasn't joking. I was very serious, and I wanted to be on the civils course. And I was probably one of those first times where I was really challenged. Do you really want to do this? And I knew, hand on heart, that was it. I really enjoyed civil. I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't the academic grade that was impressing me or anybody else. I wanted to be a civil engineer. So, yeah, really interesting moment. I'm not sure it's the normal route for people. But,
No, probably not.
It starts to bring out what's that passion? What do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
The academics can be a part of that.
Yeah. And then did you go into consulting or contracting?
Well, I went into what I knew was the right thing to do. I went into contracting. Of all the guys on my course, there was 2 of us that wanted to be contracting engineers. We were the most vocal about that, and everybody else thought we were wrong. Everybody else went into either consultancy or management in the city, and they knew they were doing the right thing. We thought they were fools. A friend of mine went off to work for Kia. And I went off to work for a company called Amy Construction to go and build some roads. Fulfilled a lifelong dream, 12 till 21, graduated at 21, so 9 years later, finally get to be a civil engineer. I was transported by Amy to my local construction site because I come from Blackpool. They sent me to halfway into Scotland and said, that's your local. It's a good drive away. And I got to build the first motorway connection between England and Scotland that had ever been built since it was united as a country 300 years ago. I was there with 2,500 other people trying to build the first connection connecting Carlisle to Glasgow. Fantastic experience. Loved every minute of it. Spent 4.5 years as a contractor. Building things all over the UK, got involved with the London Infraco systems that were down trying to transform the way London underground system worked as well. And during that time, got an opportunity to do something I didn't want to do. Part of my training scheme to get chartered, you had to go and do a year as a consultant. And I sat there thinking, I can't imagine anything worse than sitting at a desk all day using a calculator to solve problems. But you had to go and do it. So I finally got a dream opportunity to go and work for a company called Owen. And I was going to design some bridges. And I thought, that's good. And I'd worked really hard to get that placement. And the timing didn't work. And my friend Gary got to go on that placement for a year. And I thought, that's terrible. And then I had to go wait 6 months. Really awful period of time in my life, held back, it felt like, as my career. But then I got an opportunity to work for a company called Whitby Wood. They're called Whitby Wood now, Whitby Bird at the time. And I got to spend a year designing a 7-story steel frame structure in the heart of London. And on my first day, I was given a calculation pad and a pencil. I was sat down with the team and they said, Malcolm, you're the structural engineer designing the steelwork. And I said, who's going to help me? No, Malcolm, you're the structural engineer doing the superstructure. Owen is going to be doing the basement substructure, and together you're going to deliver this building. So I haven't done anything for 4.5 years. What a wonderful experience. It transformed my career. I found out it could be fun doing maths in an office. I found out it could be fun solving structural engineering problems, not just digging holes and filling them with tarmac and stuff. I found an excitement through Owen Brooker, who I'm still in contact with today, and a gentleman engineer called Mark Whitby. And if you ever get the chance to meet him, he's phenomenal talent. And it was a coincidence. He was in his year. He was year of the president of the ICE at that year as well. And a gentleman at the top of his industry, still is 25 years later, and yet could reach all the way down to a graduate and a clueless contractor like me, and be inspiring as to becoming a consultant engineer. Radically changed my career, all thanks to Owen Brooker and the people I was working with at the time. And that started my journey to Tony G from that moment on, actually. And yeah, different career.
So I appreciate you're saying it slightly tongue-in-cheek. You're saying a clueless contractor turned up to do a design placement, but you're not clueless. You've got a heck of a lot of experience behind there, just not having sat in a design office trying to design steelwork. So what do you think the connections were? You clearly loved being out on site. I imagine it's the sense of the outdoors, constructing something and seeing your efforts do something in front of you, and the public then go on to use that. How do you think that transferred across to the design office? You talk about enjoying solving problems, but you solve problems on site and in a design office. So
yeah. What drove me to become a civil engineer, it goes kind of back to that in a way. And actually, sometimes you don't always know what's fun. I think we, during our careers or during our lives, we get naturally attracted to doing some things that other people are repelled by. And they go, oh, why do you enjoy doing that? I think that can be a fantastic opportunity for us to find out what it is we want to do for a career. If we find ourselves naturally attracted to something that is just exciting, and especially if other people don't like it, that's possibly a really good career choice. So if somebody wants to be on stage and everybody in your class is going, that's crazy, why do you want to be on stage? There might be a spark there to say, that could be your thing, that could be your passion, that's something you will work at and not find it stressful. And you will excel, whatever that may be. Some people like working with people and they end up working in hospitals or working in social work. And all this, it's hard work. Every job is hard work. But if it's your hard work, it becomes fun. I think I like solving problems. I like taking messy stuff and tidying it up. That's as we'll talk about later, I'm sure, it's totally changed my career about how I do things. I thought I liked building roads. I thought I liked building bridges and things like this. And to a certain extent, yeah, it's good fun. But it wasn't completely fun. The package you got with it didn't quite work for me. I am still to this day forever grateful that I came for an interview with Tony G. And they saw something in that 4.5 years as a contractor, which they could mold into a technically competent analytical engineer. Totally different skill set, both very technical roles, but different, both commercial, both sensitive. All those skill sets are there. But as a professional contractor, you approach a problem different from a professional consultant. But we need each other, as I'm sure you know, to do things excellently in our industry. So I like problem solving. So I had to solve the problem of how do you design a 7-story steel frame building in the heart of London, just-in-time delivery, using 3D technology, using BIM before we could spell it. And in 2003, I had delivered a 3D technology building using information we had to put on a CD and post to Nottingham. We didn't get to transfer it and push it anywhere, but we took our data that we had designed. I'd worked with a technician to create a model that was then inputted into a machine so that the delivery of every nut, bolt and paint could be analysed and specified. and steel would go into one end of the factory, and what came out of the other end was a carefully planned, just-in-time delivery where the weight of each beam was known, the trucks would be weighed up to make sure they could take each component, the construction sequence was known, so that the trucks would arrive in London just in time to have the beams and the columns craned off them to build the next phase of the building, and then behind that another truck would come in. There was no delivery yard. So it all had to be timed to perfection. We knew the specification for the fire on these things. Every beam was timed in, and we were using BIM to its full extent before it even existed. And that excites me in terms of the quality control, the delivery, the processes we went through. And as part of that, my project, and probably me, was highlighted in our company at Whitby Bird, where they said, we've got the first ever project with no RFIs on it. And the executive directors came down and went, I got told off initially because I hadn't recorded them. They looked through my QA file. I got a non-conformance for no RFIs being recorded. and I hadn't followed due protocol. I spent weeks trying to find the RFIs, and there weren't any. And I was scrutinized. Where are the RFIs? There aren't any. And then, wow, I've still got the letter from the executive director, said this is unheard of. This is excellence. Because of my contractor background, I knew what the problems were I would need to solve. So I made sure they were on the drawing, everything that was needed in the right place. And it was spoken about through meetings. It was communicated in as many opportunities as was there. And not one RFI was raised by the contractor. For that's the whole steel frame building. And it was down to that balance of keeping it tidy. I wanted there to be no problems when I handed my design over. Don't know what drives that, but it's fascinating. And I wonder if there was something in that was seen by a gentleman called John Vincent, who took me on in the Ashford office of Tony G back in 2003, that he thought, maybe I can work with this, and maybe I can train up this engineer to do what we can do as an organisation. So I like solving problems. I think that's it, whether that's to do with projects or people, and that's how my career's gone on. I spent 10 years at Tony G designing things, which was really exciting, and then developed a different way of looking at civil engineering since then. But I don't know, what's your next question, Nick?
Well, I was going to say, I know that there's been a few other sort of relatively big changes throughout your career. I think you spent some time working abroad, which always feels like a really big step to take. I'd imagine it seems quite easy once you've done it, but with all of these things, when you think about, we're engineers, the first thing we think about is the logistics. How do I move me and my family abroad and start working? And I've got to work to different codes in a different office and different culture and all the rest of it. So you clearly like solving difficult problems. You like a challenge. How did that opportunity come up, and how did you decide to take that?
I don't know why, but I always wanted to work abroad. I'd never lived abroad. I'd barely travelled by the age of 14, 15 outside of my own village, never mind my own county. And maybe that was it. Maybe I just wanted to get out and see what the world was doing. And I joined Amy. Amy was a very British company at the time. They had a few international projects. They did so. There wasn't really opportunities to work. One in the Falklands, I think, had popped up occasionally for a couple of people to go and build a runway out there. So the opportunities never came. And then when I came to Tony G was a small company at the time, 150 people internationally, as they used to put it, which basically meant we had 120 people in the UK and 30 people over in Hong Kong. I don't know why Hong Kong really wasn't an attractive place to go for me. So I never asked to work abroad because I thought they'll send me to Hong Kong if I ask for that. And I don't really, it's not something that's on my list to go to. So annual appraisal after annual appraisal after annual appraisal, I never said I want to work abroad. So I was at Tony G for 4 or 5 years. I got chartered during that time. And a couple of years later, an email went around the whole of Tony G from Graham Nicholson, who was CEO at the time, saying, we're going to be setting up an office in a place called Abu Dhabi, and we're looking for people that might be interested in taking a look at that to lead the office. That came through on a Wednesday afternoon. I immediately called Graham back up to check that I'd received the email correctly, and was this intended for me and other people? And he said, yes, it's everybody who's a chartered engineer, senior engineer and above. We need that professional recognition, and we're open to ideas to explore who that could be. And they weren't limiting themselves by what they knew in the head office. They wanted to know if anybody in the business was interested. I immediately said I probably need to check with my wife if she wants to come, as you pointed out in your question, because that would be nice. And at the time, she was just coming to the end of her maternity leave. I had our first child had arrived and was very close to her first birthday at the time. So I spent the rest of Wednesday trying to do a bit of engineering, but actually spending most of my time trying to think about the problem. How do you go home to your wife to say to you, I've got a cool idea, shall we move to Abu Dhabi? Now, at the time, nobody had heard of Abu Dhabi. We'd barely heard of Dubai in 2009. Spent the entire day, worked out all the angles, all the problems, had all the arguments ready, came home Wednesday night and sat down with my wife, who just negotiated her return back to work with her own organisation. And I thought, right, we've got a couple of hours of discussion here. I put the question to her and said, if I had the opportunity to apply to work abroad with Tony G in a place called Abu Dhabi, do you think I should do that? And how could it affect us? And she just went, yeah, let's do it.
So off you went.
Wow. So all of my arguments went out the window. I didn't need them. Problem solved. Came back to Tony G Thursday morning, sent an email 9:00. Yes, Graham, I'm interested. What's the next step? We need your application. We need to come and interview you. I had an application interview on Friday. Monday morning, the offer was on my table. 3.5 weeks later, I was in Abu Dhabi. So within a month of not even have heard of Abu Dhabi, I was landing at 2:00 in the morning in Abu Dhabi airport, Tony G's number one employee for what was going to be a fledgling office. I met Nick Suddard out there, who's the director from Hong Kong, still is, and he was brilliant as a first arrival, and a gentleman called Chris Lawler, who was doing a placement out there as part of a development of a bridge connection between Sadia Island and Abu Dhabi Island at the time as well. So there were people out there from Tony G, which was great, but absolutely mind-blowing experience going to a country that was developing as fast as the UAE was at a time when it was really accelerating its development. A playground for civil engineers. An unbelievable place to go to.
Yeah. And I suspect probably a lot of the experiences you had there started to sow the seed for what you wanted to do next with the ICE. I can imagine the idea of trying to start an office, trying to employ people, get the right experience, the right competencies, et cetera, starts to highlight perhaps where some of the gaps are in the industry and where it needs a bit more support.
Yeah. You give me more credit than I deserve, Nick. I went out to Abu Dhabi for the pure fun. I just thought it was, how do you work abroad? You know, and actually it was really attractive. I had no idea what an Abu Dhabi was. It wasn't like, do you want to go and work in Paris or things like that? It was, do you want to work in Abu Dhabi, in a country, in a city, in a town, in a culture, completely alien, not even on the public's agenda. There was no Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. You know, it just didn't exist. It was a sandy island. So for me, the adventure into complete unknown was absolutely exciting. Setting up an office when there was no rules, go and find business in an area we've never done business before. Go and find clients in a way we've never found clients before. Go and understand the local law so you can employ somebody working under a jurisdiction we've never worked in before. So I was doing marketing, employment law, HR, engineering, working to standards we'd never used before because we're using a lot of American standards out there, and designing things for a bit of earthquakes occasionally and all sorts of wonderful stuff. And that just on the edge of your ability all the time, always solving problems. Thoroughly exciting. I, on average, worked 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, for about 2.5 years. It absorbed every fibre of my body in many ways, good or bad. I did pay attention to my family. I reassure you, Nick, as a man with a young family as yourself, did do that. But the job was significantly consuming in a positive way. Really proud of the office we built. Got 7 permanent employees by the time I got there. Bearing in mind, it took a year to get a trade license going, and then it took another year to get the reputation of the business building out there. And then we got to employ a gentleman called Ted Helsby, who's still there now. That really cemented our reputation in the local area. He's got huge connections in civil engineering, well known for his temporary works, career in doing temporary works engineering. And that really built the reputation for the office there then. And from then on, we flew. Did it open my eyes to professional development? Not at the time. But it did question what to do. Every year in the Middle East, you used to, and I think it's still the case in most places, you would pay for your rent up front for 12 months. So it causes
office space rent you're talking about?
No, your personal rent. So you'd rent, 1, 2, 3 bedroom flats and houses and things like that. So your accommodation, you would pay up front every year. So it created this natural yearly cycle that the ICE encourages and lots of companies encourage doing that development. What do you want to do this year? So every year you'd sit down there with a big check and you'd have to write 12 months rent up front, send it off to your landlord, and it would create that question every month. Do you want to do this for another year? Because that's what you're investing in. So it was this natural cycle. And then one year the question came up, do you want to do this for another year? And I thought, no, this has been great. I've loved it. And it's that family thing again. It's, work is part of life and life is part of life, bigger part of life, isn't it? I was like, we don't want to do this again. My wife had a great time. I had a great time. My daughter at the time was coming up to her 4th birthday. School was going to be starting. We had another child on the way, all sorts of things in terms of what do you want to do with your work? What do you want to do with your life? Bouncing around there. And there's an opportunity to come back because we originally only went out for a year.
Standard.
There was an opportunity, what do you want to do? And I got in touch with Steve Harwich at the time and said, I think this will be my last year. And then during that year, he was looking for replacements, and a gentleman called Peter Eves Toy came around and joined Ted. So we had a good, strong team to pick up. And that was like, what do you want to do? I came back to the UK, got the opportunity to work in a new team that was developing in the marine specialism. We were developing with John Vincent, and Andy Marshall was there as well. And Andy and I used to work alongside each other to support John on how do you do international marine projects. And the first one we did was designing the world's second port for the largest ships on the planet, 500 meters long, in Kuala Lumpur. And I designed that from Ashford in Kent, working with an engineer in Hong Kong. An incredible opportunity using Malaysian standards, American standards, Indian construction techniques, British standards, Japanese standards. Just phenomenal headaches trying to pull all these different things together. Achieved it, delivered it. There's 900 meters of concrete out in Kuala Lumpur that I created that has allowed Kuala Lumpur to continue to expand as a city. For ships that are now the biggest ships on the planet, 18,000 TEUs on them, phenomenal size ships, bigger than you can imagine, even if you looked at them.
Yeah.
And then one day, I thought, I want to do something different. Explosion in my head. I'm enjoying designing this thing in Kuala Lumpur. I've designed helping Scotland and England connect again with Queen's Ferry Crossing, and I helped put the foundations into the bottom of there. Working on a project where we had standing charges of something between 100 and 150,000 pounds a day. Incredible pressure, exciting problems to solve. I still remember trying to find a 50 millimeter thick piece of steel in Glasgow on a Friday night so that we could keep the ship going. We found it, it got welded on, and Saturday morning everything was brilliant. But wow, trying to keep these things going was brilliant, but something said, do something different. And an opportunity came up to go and work for the ICE for what's called an MDO, Membership Development Officer. It floated through, and I took a look at it. I'd always been interested in Ashford in helping people train, doing lunchtime talks, and keeping technically things up to date. And how do we do that exhausting thing of that never-ending continuous development of once you know something, somebody changes the rules, you have to change. You have to learn out, version 2 or 3 of the things.
It's also that the more you develop through the industry, the more you realise goes on that you just didn't even know existed.
Yeah, the frontier gets bigger and bigger.
Your language has already changed from the projects you first started on, where I did this, I did that, and to we did this and we delivered that, because you're starting to see the bigger picture. And yeah, because you were focused on delivering a specific thing, which absolutely you did, but you've now moved into getting a team to deliver this.
Absolutely. And how do we know what we're doing? And your team is sometimes tangible. It's in your control, if you like, or within your influence. Sometimes your team is not tangible. The contractors or the subcontractors or the people you don't get to see, who are out there, how do you influence the information that they need and the quality of their work? And not just influence in that direction, but how do they help get that knowledge that they've got back to you, to improve your own knowledge? Sometimes you don't know what you need to know until you hear somebody tell you. That's always a bit when somebody opens a door that you didn't even know was a door. You go, So the MDO opportunity was brilliant. I remember sitting down with my director at the time, saying, "I'm really serious about doing this. It's a totally different career change. I don't want to leave the organisation I'm in. I thoroughly love what we do. I just want to try something totally different." So we'd agreed I'd try it for a year. So I applied for this organisation, Institute of Civil Engineers, very non-technical role, very different in terms of the project delivery is gone. There's different ideas out there. And the next journey of my career started, and I thought I'll do it for a year and I'll come back if I don't like it. And I was told there would be a place for me if I wanted that, because I guess I'd proven my skill set. So I went for a year. And 10 years later was still doing it. I absolutely loved it from day one. Completely caught me out how exciting it was, to the point that 1 year turned into 10 like blink of an eye. I had the opportunity to work alongside the person who'd helped me with my career a little bit, a guy called Steve, had been my MDO. And he turned into my line manager. The Institute of Civil Engineers is a totally different beast of a business. It's a charity. It works in a very different way. It's incredibly widespread, and yet a tiny employee structure within it, where everybody does one thing, and it's very different from what everybody else does. Unlike in an engineering organisation where there's a lot of similarity about what people do. So very different dynamics, very different teams, and the job role itself was originally go and meet graduates and help them become, members of this institution, help them understand the rules, and help their mentors understand that rules. I took it to a different place because I thought, well, getting chartered is one thing, but it's not as exciting as you think it is. What's exciting is enjoying your career. So if there's value in becoming chartered because you want to do something, that's exciting. Getting 8 letters after your name, it's okay. but that quickly dies. That does. You get the certificate, you get the photographs, you get the champagne corks, and then 2 weeks
I didn't
later,
get a champagne cork.
well, you need better friends. You might just get the cork, not the ball. And there's something about that. If being a civil engineer and growing a career beyond chartership, because hopefully you don't retire the day after, you're at the beginning of a career. And something I've learned recently about the Canadian measurement, they literally use that phrase. Once you've been professionally recognized, you are now an engineer, you are at the beginning of your career, get going. And it's like, wow, after 8 years of development, you're at the beginning. There's something interesting about that challenge, to say, what do you want to do? Now you know what you can do. So when I was an MDO, I went out there to say, yeah, why would you want to join the ICU? Why connect with it? What is it about? What is the knowledge that it has? What is it about the organizations that are connected to it? There's 16, 17 specialist organizations connected to it. Why do you want to be embedded in it? Why do you want to get access to their library? Why do you want to meet other members? Why do you want to engage with this institution that, if you do, actually will help you build a career, whether that's a technical career or a business development career or safety? There's people out there that do what you do better than you do. So if you can connect with them, you can engage with each other and build careers that not just improve yourself, but could improve the industry a little bit, whether it's on a UK scale or, an international scale. And that influence of quality and driven people who want things to be better for the sake of it actually is brilliant. And meeting what I call passionate people who are absolute nerds for their subjects is just, I love it. I love meeting people that are absolutely obsessed about something and it just drives their whole career, whether it's to do with safety or technical challenges. I've enjoyed some of the conversations with you, Nick, where you were telling me about tire pressures and millimeter changes and the fundamental difference it makes to how a bridge bends when you're just trying to pick up a couple of 100 tons of structure and put them in one place. But if you don't pump the tires up properly, it will screw the model around and it'll screw the reality around, and you've got to adapt as an engineer. And your face lit up about
it's good
that
fun.
little detail, because it's good fun. And yeah, I've met a guy called David Thomas, who good fun for him is trying to change the way that safety is done in civil engineering by engineers engineering safety, not administrating safety, not following documents, but actually engaging with how engineering can be done better so it's safer inherently in the design solution. Because that's the reason safety was brought into our industry for engineers. It was to make it better, not document the process, if that makes sense. You've got to document it, sure, but actually, if we get excited about the problems we solve by creating something simpler, quicker, faster, better, less dangerous, less noisy, that means the engineers are being proper creative about what they're trying to do and not being ignorant about the humans who use what we do or build what we do, and we're part of that solution. So again, that's problem solving. If we can solve a problem that other people don't know exists now because we've got rid of it, we've eliminated it. Nobody ever says thank you because they didn't even know it was there. But if as a designer you can remove it, the contractor will build it quicker. Or as a designer we can remove it, the public are safe because the vehicles are on one side of the road with a big barrier in the way, and they're on the other side of the road and they don't have to worry about what might happen. Or they can use a pushchair without having to think about how they navigate complex curbs. We can eliminate problems without people for society on one level or another, can't we? That excites me. How can we help as a business, as an organization, get excited about what we're really about? I went to a talk only last night with the current president, a guy called David Porter, and he said that's the vision we all need to keep on. Yes, get excited about the technical because we've got to do that. That is our thing. But if we can step back from that for a moment and say, once this bridge is in place, these communities are now connected for 100 years or more. And if we get it right and we invest in that correctly and get our clients and our consultants contractors to invest in that correctly, we'll get excited about projects that are life-changing stuff. And they talked about a local bridge down here in Rochester, that when the Romans built it, they did it so they could conquer this country and control it better and cross this one complicated river that was between the port of Dover and London. They did a couple of bridges in London as well, but this was sort of halfway on. And that's why they built it, to control and conquer the nation. That bridge, albeit maintained well over a few years, lasted for something like 1,200 to 1,300 years and had an impact on that society in terms of roads, transportation, commerce for decades and years and centuries. Wow, isn't that? And I'm sure the Romans are not impressed by the problem they solved for the medieval people just wanted to go to market. That's part of it, isn't it? Yeah. Isn't that exciting?
I think that was an absolutely fascinating conversation about Malcolm's career journey, some of the decisions that he's made, and the incredible courage he had to take on various different responsibilities. In the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the roles that he's had with the ICE and the work that he's been doing helping technicians get the professional recognition that they deserve. If you're enjoying this podcast, please do like, subscribe and share. It really helps me to build my listener base, which in turn helps me to encourage more great guests to come on the show. So thank you very much.